Hey, good day. Bill Bergfeld here, and I wanted to cover a few things today about the conversation that many times you're going to have with your spouse once you retire. You know, I'm talking about the one where you get to talk about what retirement's actually going to look like. Because, you know, some part of you sometimes is afraid to sit down and talk these things out. Mainly because you're concerned about what you might figure out about what your spouse wants that contradicts what you want. You know, maybe you don't agree. That's okay. Maybe you have no idea what your spouse actually pictures as far as how their day is going to look once you do retire. And maybe you're both just, I don't know, maybe you're just avoiding it because you believe it somehow it's going to work itself out. Well, that's a challenge. And I know it is. My name's Bill. If that's you right now, stick with me. Because the next 10 or so minutes, I'm going to give you the exact framework for having this conversation with your spouse and doing so without creating chaos, without having to tiptoe around different things that you want to talk about. Here's why I think most couples avoid having this conversation. There's several real reasons that people dodge it, and let me start off by saying this. One of the reasons they dodge it is they want to avoid the conflict. There's a fear of conflict. They just don't want to get in the argument, and then there's that fear of discovering that you want something totally different than what your spouse wants. And then finally, there's that fear that there's the fear that the money's just not going to fit. Whatever it is, the two of you need to sit down. You need to figure out a pattern. You need to figure out something to make it work. Avoiding the conversation, that's not going to make the conflict disappear, and it's just going to delay. It's going to delay the argument to a point where it's actually a battle. I don't want you to get to the point where you're worried about, are we going to actually enjoy retirement or are we not going to enjoy retirement? Let me use an example that I've actually walked through. I talked with Bob and Caroline, both who realized that 3 weeks before his last days of work, one of them wanted to, and I'm not going to say which one, one of them wanted to move near the grandkids, and the other one wanted to stay put. I helped them understand that's not a retirement problem. That's a communication problem that retirement has just made impossible for them to ignore any longer. Bob and Caroline, of course, that's not their real names, but I wanted to bring up their example because there's a framework that I always use, and I call it the 3 required conversations, and this is what I worked with Bob and Caroline on. There's a problem, I think, when you're trying to solve the whole thing and sitting down just one time. And that's just never going to work. I truly believe you need to break it into 3 separate, smaller conversations. This is what I usually teach. Conversation number 1. So what I call the vision conversation. Asking, what is it that the ideal Tuesday would look like for each of you? Not this week, not next week, but what's the ideal Tuesday going to look like 5 years from now, maybe? I'm not looking for numbers here. I'm not looking for financial numbers. I'm not looking for logistics. I just want them to verbally talk about what they think that day is going to look like. Talk about it out loud. That's what I call the vision conversation. The second conversation I talked to Bob and Caroline about was having the money conversation. Now here's where we bring in the actual numbers. And we're going to bring them in without any judgment. We're just going to put the facts out on the table to discuss them. And we're going to talk about it together, one at a time, calmly. Then the third conversation I always suggest is let's have what I call a roles conversation. Here's what I mean by that. When you have this roles down conversation, you're going to try to figure out who's going to do what. That's important. You know, who's going to do this chore? Who's going to do that chore? Who's going to take care of the social calendar? How much togetherness times are we actually going to spend? And how much quiet time, personal time, separate time are we going to have? Can we set aside maybe 30 minutes this week just to dream out loud about our numbers, about our retirement, our logistics? Can we just talk about out loud what our picture is? That's what I'm trying to get people to do. You see, doing the vision conversation first, before you bring up the money idea, keeps the whole concept from turning into an argument over budget. Really, what I found out is, in dealing with retired couples, the hardest part of this framework is how do you actually get it done? How do you actually do it? How do you actually have it? And here's what I want to try to encourage. Well, it's what I encourage Bob and Caroline to do, and what I encourage anyone to do that's, if you're watching this video and you're experiencing the same thing. Schedule these conversation times like a real appointment. Because it won't happen. It won't happen when things settle down and you're not really talking about it anymore. So schedule it like it's a real appointment. Second of all, have it somewhere else other than your house. Somewhere else, like a coffee shop maybe, or some neutral location. And then here's the last thing I want to suggest. Only cover one topic per sitting. Don't try to resolve the vision, the money, and the roles all in one conversation. That's just, it's too much at one time. And then here's the hardest part. Learn to listen. And listen with one objective. Listen so that you're really trying and you're really wanting to understand. You're not just trying to win the argument, not trying to win your position or prove your point. You're gathering information about how your spouse fears and how they hope. You don't want to spend your time sitting there trying to organize a rebuttal to what they're telling you. And lastly, I want to say this. It's okay that you can disagree. And that's okay. Just recognize that you're going to have to come back to it at some point. Progress, not resolution, is the win in the first few conversations. Let me close this video with this idea. If at any point what I talked about here was helpful, I have put together a 21-page workbook that actually goes deeper on this whole concept. A simple format that has simple but exact questions to ask in each of these three conversations. I'll put the link in the description. There won't be any pitches along with it, just the guide. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the button and subscribe so that you don't miss next week's post. In the meantime, take care, have a good day, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.